My name is Vikki Coombes, and I am doing a series of conversations with other people with multiple passions to find out how they are weaving them together into lives that they love. And today I have this wonderful opportunity to speak with Carole, and we met when both of us were studying transformational coaching through NMS. And so, Carole, it'd be really great if you could tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, and how you are exploring this concept of being a person with multiple passions and what that means to you.
Hi, so I'm Carole. It's really interesting because right away when you ask who you are, that's already no, I've got to give myself a label. So who am I? That's an interesting one. So I'm a life coach. I'm also a teacher. I'm also a mother of 3 children. I would describe myself as a traveler. I want to become a digital nomad. And I'm also a philosopher, I think. So as soon as you say, who are you? I've got all these things cramming in, and I love drum and bass. So that's part of who am I as well. Music is important. Dancing is important. So it's really difficult to pinpoint when you ask me right away, who are you? I'm French as well.
I like the way that's kind of like, right? Like, I'm this, and I'm French.
Yeah. Last but not least, so that's I don't know if there was another question as well, wasn't there?
Well, yeah, so the piece around, so you and I pretty much since we met have been exploring this, right, in our different ways. And I talked to you a bit about it, and then you were like, oh, what's that mean? And then you started going, I feel I'm resonating a bit with that. But I also know that you've had times when you've sat there and gone, am I really a person with multiple passions, or is everyone like this? Or can you tell us a bit more about that for you, that journey of the first time you heard someone talk to you about this and how you explored it?
Okay, so how I explored it was during a coaching session when I was being coached. And basically, one of my friends asked me, so, okay, now you're doing life coaching. What's that about? You did massage therapy X years ago, then you did this and that. What's that all about? And that made me really question myself. I was like, oh, okay, what am I doing with my life? I start all these things, and then like I finished my massage course. I could be a masseuse, but I've never done it. It's just the idea just went. I love the idea, but it's just gone on the back burner. Yeah. So anyway, when I was being coached, I think Yannick mentioned that as well, is my coach mentioned multipotentiality to me. So watch this TED talk by Emily Wapnick. I did. I was crying listening to that, thinking, oh my God. And so I was 50. It took me up to like age 50 to realize nothing is wrong with me. There are other people like me. And that was such a relief for me. And then also I watched the video by, what's the name of this writer? Pray, Love, Eat, Pray, Love.
Oh, Elizabeth. Yeah, Elizabeth Gilbert. Yeah.
Yeah, and she did an amazing talk about people not having a passion and then feeling lost. What's wrong with me? I don't have a passion. And then it was really beautiful video as well to realize that you're working on it and something will happen, and just trust the process. You don't have to know what it is, but you'll get there. And finally, the last piece, last week, I was watching, I went to the talk with Robert Stevenson, he's now the CEO of Animas. And he was talking about his journey, how he started with art, being a mime, doing training, and he said he'd never foreseen in his dream that he would become a CEO one day.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love how. So my passion now is really to tell kids or the whole world, like, it's okay not to know what you want to do because it will happen.
And it's also, so within that, I know that you've become very focused recently. Is that when you were doing the massage studies, were you really that as well at the time?
Oh, yeah, completely. I go 100%, even more. My whole brain goes into that. Like, so before that, during that, I wanted to become a fully qualified teacher, do the PGCE. And for that, I needed to have a second language. So I went studied Spanish, A-level, teaching myself A-level all by myself. Every night I'd be reading, learning, just completely crazy fanatic about learning Spanish. Then to do that, also I had to do my GCSE maths, which I didn't have. So I was doing all these things, and every time it's like, oh. And then I gave up the idea of doing my PGCE. That's okay. So yeah, whenever I do, I go completely 100%. So at the moment, I'm like, yeah, I'm completely focused with the coaching, learning about the brain. And I'm like, oh, I'm missing other bits. But like, I used to be very manual. I love DIY. I love painting, decorating. And that's just completely gone. It's like I don't have time for that. I want to do it, but it's just like I'm so focused that, yeah, it's not happening.
That's one of the challenges I think that some people with multiple passions face, right? So we often when people fall into this space, they believe that we're all kind of similar to each other, and we're totally not. And that's, for me, one of the reasons the hummingbird analogy works so well, because there are 300 species, more than 300 different species of hummingbirds. And I'm like, well, actually, multiple people with multiple passions are the same, right? The core, there are core things that are similar about us, about how we approach life and what makes us thrive, right? Having variety in our lives, having change in our lives, learning. We need to be learning. I think we need that kind of newness and something new to challenge us and dive into. But some people have that kind of must have multiple things going on at once, that you're diving in and out of all of them all the time, kind of that, lots and lots of different things. Other people go, oh, brand new thing, I'm going to deep dive into that, and everything else falls away because you deep dive into a new thing. And you might have a multiple range of things that are attached to that, but there is this kind of one thing that you're finding out as much as possible about that one thing until you get to a point where you go, okay, next. And you move, and there's people who fall between those two things as well. And also the thing I've been looking at more recently, both in my own life, and I happen to luck into the fact that my partner is a hummingbird. So I can look at him because he's a very different species from me and go, okay, well, this is how it plays out in my life, but how does it play out in yours, And one of the things I've been looking at is there may be different times in our lives when we need that variety of lots and lots of different things all going on at the same time, and other times when we're like, actually, I just want to focus on this, And we may find that we're not one or the other necessarily. It's contextual, or it's topic, or it's phase of life, or whatever, right?
It's funny you say, I want to focus on this. It's not even conscious. Mm-hmm. It's not, I want to do this. It's just happening. And you're like observing yourself. It's like, wow, there's no space for anything else. And it's quite obsessive. Mm-hmm. Like all of a sudden it's hard to be present, like with your kids and on holiday, or do something else. Like I'm taking my daughter on holiday. We're doing a big trip in Indonesia. And the big question is like, shall I take my computer? I was like, ooh, dangerous, because I'm going to carry on working. I'm going to carry on learning, and I'm not going to be fully present. And it's very tricky. So I'm a bit torn, because I can feel the urge of carry on, because I like mixing. Like when I was away in Spain for a month, I was in flow completely. I was away, but I was in flow. I was really learning, doing lots of webinar, working, coaching, and I managed also to do some activities. And so I was really in a happy place, because I could mix everything. But sometimes I think, okay, if you're with somebody and you're with your child, it's probably the last opportunity you have to be fully present and being together. I think, okay, maybe I'll have to let go of that for a bit. I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard. It's like a drug. It's like a drug in a way. Learning. It's like, how do you detach yourself and allow space to do something else?
Yeah, exactly. And like yourself, I mean, at the moment, I'm in a really interesting space for myself, because although I'm learning lots of new things, it's all quite gentle stuff. I don't have that burning newness at the moment. And even as I'm saying that, I'm like, you are so asking. The universe is going to dump something in your lap any second now. And yet I absolutely recognize what you're saying, that piece around, you know, something new comes into my life that I go, I have, that's amazing, you know, and I think sometimes we kind of get sucked into this new thing, and get ourselves really bought into it without, like a bit like you were saying, without consciously sitting back and going, does this fit, right? Does this fit with the lifestyle I want? Does it fit with the people that matter to me? Does it fit, you know, a lot of these coaching questions that we ask our own clients, right? We sometimes miss for ourselves. And you've already touched on this, that piece around when you've got these multiple passions, whether it's the version where you deep dive into it and all out focused, or you've got so many different things going on, you almost can't make a choice between them. The challenge of managing your day-to-day life as well. You know, how do you do that? How, when you're that focused, because I very rarely go to that place. I'm much more the scattergun person.
Mm-hmm.
Although as I'm saying that, I'm like, when I'm on a project for a client, like, because I do consulting, actually, okay. But yeah, so when you're in that space and you're really focused, and you just gave us an example that when you were in Spain, you were able to be focused, but you also found space and time to do it differently. But now that you're back in the UK, because that's where you're at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how are you juggling? How are you juggling the passion, that focus with day-to-day life?
It's difficult because you realize you don't have enough time, enough hours in the day. But I think I'm quite at peace, because when I'm in it, I'm in flow. So I managed to separate different things. And it's been a long journey. It's been like lots of coaching and reflecting and seeing what works, and accepting as well that you can't do everything. So that's been very useful. And my daughter is very good at reminding me, you're not present now. Can you drop your phone? Can you look at me in the eyes? So she's very good. When I'm here in the room. Drop what you're doing. So, okay. So it's good to have people reminding us, hang on, you need to have your social life now. You need to go out, and you can't just be on your computer learning all the time. It's nice, but it's also nice to see your friends and do other things.
Yeah. Yes.
And and at the moment it's working. It's because I've done so much learning. I think I don't know how to explain. But yeah, there's lots of juggling. But I don't set myself, a lot of people are like, but goal setting, today I will achieve this and that. I can't do this, because that I know I have like book session with, because I'm a coach, I will have my clients, I have some things will happen, but otherwise I'm more in spontaneity. I would say, I'm going to do a LinkedIn post, or I'm going to do that, and things don't get done. Well, it's a bit of a luxury, I think, to be able to be like that. I think I'm really happy that I don't feel this pressure of, okay, today this is what I'm doing. And
have you been in that space before where you have had that pressure?
Yeah, I've tried that. I've tried to really stick to have some tasks, but I realized this is not me. And it's like, I like the freedom. That's part of my values, is the freedom and flexibility are my top two values, and I'm just really going with it.
Yeah, because I found, so one of my learnings in the last sort of 3 to 6 months for myself was a bit of a shift around that whole piece as well. Around, in my head, I thought things I don't enjoy doing, but I have to get done, right? So I run a business. There are things like accounting. And I've had certain work with some of my consulting clients, and this is the case across all consulting clients. There will always be pieces that are almost non-creative, repetitive, but still need to be done, right? And I thought, well, maybe what I should do, because they're always, if I don't watch myself, get left to the absolute last minute. So I was like, well, rather than doing that, what if I scheduled a whole day and all I did was the things I don't enjoy, right? And I tried that, and it did not work, because I just procrastinated. There was always something else that was more interesting, even if it was just flicking across to Facebook and just whatever, right? I was like, okay, so that's not working. What could I do differently, etc., etc. And I actually found for the things I don't enjoy, setting aside a small time space, putting on some music, and setting my timer and saying to myself, right, how much can you get done in 45 minutes? I got so much more done because, and I was just like, that's interesting. That's really interesting. Whereas things that I enjoy, like things that I'm into, but like you, I find a 3 to 4 hour period and I'm getting myself into flow with it, and I just create and I do, and suddenly I look at the time, I'm like, oh my goodness. So there are times I've also had to set timers for that when I know I've actually, but like you, I've got a meeting or I've got a call or something I need to go on.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a 3 hour period, but I also know I could get lost in this. You know, I could totally lose sense of what's going on elsewhere, set myself a timer. So that's become a really useful and surprisingly useful, completely non brain surgery type decision, right? Like it's really simple to do. And yet it's had such an impact on how much I've done, particularly when it's stuff I don't want to do or don't enjoy doing, but have to be done. So yeah. So there are ways.
Yeah, I think that the big message to people is like, you know, you will hear so many different things. People will say, oh, you have to have a routine, you have to wake up at 5, you have to do your 30 minutes meditation, your yoga class, da 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 da. Well, no, you have to find what works for you. And that's, you know, and it's trial and error. And I'm still trial and error. Okay, I'll show you something. This beautiful calendar.
Yeah.
I bought it. I thought, yeah, that's my solution. I'm going to do this and that. I don't know. Yeah. I used it 1 week and this was out of the window.
Yeah.
I'm still sitting there thinking maybe one day I'll go back to it. But, you know, I've used things like Trello and put everything on Trello, all very nice. And I never look at it. And it's okay. I'm trying things. It's not, you know, it's not the end of the day. I'm still getting things done in my own way. I'm improvising. And like the good thing, like the admin thing that worked for me when I was in Spain, I said, okay, I've got a few things I want to get done in a month. I want to do my tax return. So it means doing all my accounts, which I hadn't done. I want to log on my hours of coaching for my next ICF level. So that hasn't been done for a while. And I knew at some stage in that month, I would need to allocate that time. And then I did one day. I was like, it took me 3-4 hours, but I was completely in there and job done. I was really happy. I said, hey, it's done. So yeah, I think people need to give themselves a break. If things don't happen, well, it's okay. And, you know, you'll find a way, and we always find a way.
Yeah. It does come down to choices too. Like you said yourself, that you've got to the point where you accept that you can't do everything, which to me sounds like you have made a choice to do some things and not others. So how's that worked for you?
I think, as I said before, I don't make that conscious choice. I think it's just because I'm not planning today, I'm going to do that. It's just all of a sudden I'm like, oh, it's more free flowing. It's like, yeah, I'll do that. Like one day I was in the car and started writing an article. I never said to myself, oh, today I'm going to write an article about X. It just came to me. And we're stuck on the road for 5 hours. And I used the 5 hours just typing away. And that's so nice. I didn't stop myself, say, what am I doing? Why am I not speaking to the driver? Or, you know, I was just like in flow. And that's really nice to just go with the flow. That's what you call the expression, go with the flow.
Okay. So you've got your own business now, right?
Yeah.
Have you been an employee before?
Yeah.
So what's the difference for you between being an employee with multiple passions versus being a business person with multiple passions?
I think as an employee, I found roles which let me do lots of different things.
Okay.
And I had the autonomy to do things the way I wanted to. So that was really nice, using my creativity. And I've been full-time, but also I had lots of different portfolio career I've had. And I think for me now, the luxury of being self-employed is that the freedom with my time, you know, I don't have to get up at 7 a.m. and go somewhere. And I know that of people start being self-employed and then recreate a false working pattern, 9 to 5, going to a co-working place and do that. But I don't need that. I have a co-working place. I hardly go. I think it's okay. And yeah, I think it's given me so much more freedom. I know I'm really privileged. I'm really, really privileged.
Yeah.
That I will.
But again, it comes down to choice. You made that choice, right? You've made a choice about how you are generating revenue.
Yeah.
You've made a choice about, like you're saying, do I do this my way? Like, so I use time in my way, or do I, like you're saying, I know lots of people who've replicated the employment concept of, well, I'll go to an office and I'll be there at 8:30 and I won't leave till 5:30 and I'll do all my work in that kind of space. And I'm like, a bit like you, I'm like, I'm going to walk downstairs. I'm going to, and absolutely, there are times when I go to client site and I do, you know, and then I fit in with their schedule because I'm on their side doing things their way. Yeah. But I also quite often with them negotiate that I will do that a couple of days a week, but the rest of the week I won't. You know, I'll do it my way. But there's something there as well. So one of the things I've found with a lot of the people I've met over the last, 3 to 5 years with multiple passions is almost it's almost like some of them are waiting for all this stuff to happen to them, right? Rather than saying, I've had people say to me, well, how did you get X? So for instance, when I was employed, I took a 3-month sabbatical and went and traveled around Africa. And quite a few people said, well, how did you do that? And I went, I asked. Right? Obviously I did slightly more than that, but I sat down and did the research, looked at what I could do, put together what I thought my employer would say yes to as a kind of, if you guys give me this is what I will promise you back. It's a two-way thing. And then I asked and they said yes. But if I just sat there waiting for them to suddenly have a light bulb and go, you know what, we're going to give Vikki 3 months off so she can go and travel around Africa, they wouldn't have. Why would they have thought that? They wouldn't, right? But it's the same with, how are we recognized, how are we rewarded, how are we valued for what we bring to the table? Because quite often people say, well, I'm only, I'm employed and I am only employed to do this. And they know I can do all of this, but they won't let me do all of this. And I'm like, well, what have you done to help them see the value that you can bring? But it's not enough just to talk about yourself as having these skills. You need to show them.
Well, I mean, you have to be in the right culture as well, because and with the right boss. I mean, I had a boss when I was a teacher and I started making videos with the students, and she never said, no, stop doing that. This is not on your job description. And then they use the videos for the open day and things like that. And it was just magical. And then it just happened. Yeah. And I just made it happen. I didn't just say I was really bossy because I made it happen. I did not ask, basically, but she just saw it was happening and was it. Other bosses will feel like it's a bit of a threat. They think, oh, what is it doing? That's not just the job description. How they're going to do their daily tasks, and they're doing. So, yeah, it depends on your boss, how they approach you and how they see what you need and how you can work. Because I think I don't want to generalize, multi-potentialite will have a capacity to do much more than other people because we have such a drive. I will manage to fit all my normal task and do my extra creative stuff on top of it.
Yeah.
And you just have to reassure your boss, yeah, I can do it all. I'm okay. I can do it all. But saying that, then the flip side is you so 100% in your workplace, and when you get home, I was dead. I would just have a power nap every time I got home. And again, it's having the space for your family, and it's like giving it so much.
And I think that's sometimes where the challenge comes, right? And it's not a challenge I face because I don't have kids. Although occasionally I do have to sit there and go, I'm in a relationship. And not just a relation, it's not just the relation, it's not just the intimate relationship. Sometimes I have to sit there and go, remind myself, actually, a bit like you were saying earlier about seeing friends, actually I haven't seen my friends. And one of the patterns I've noticed in my own life choices, conscious or unconscious, is because I'm an introvert, I'm a really strong introvert, which is why it's fine for me to work from home by myself. I'm perfectly happy. Thoroughly love it. But I have noticed there's a couple of months each year, and it's around about the same time each year, when I just go off the social radar. And it's not that I sit there and go, okay, it's such and such a date, social radar closed. It's more something I've started seeing, well, actually, this happens about the same time every year, and it's about 2 months-ish, and then suddenly I'll go, okay, I'm ready to see everybody again now. But I do find that there are times, particularly if I'm into something new I'm into something new, I'm meeting new people, which fascinates me because one of my underlying patterns is people. So I'm meeting new people and I'm engaging with them, and I suddenly think, hold on, I've been so busy engaging with new people and doing this new thing that these people that matter to me, I haven't seen and talked to in months. And that's when I sit there and go, okay, I need to become, again, more conscious of how am I connecting with people that matter to me. Because you've moved countries like I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's something that I've explored with everybody around how have you connected and maintained connections with people that matter to you over time, and as your interests have changed, and as you're saying, as all the different careers you've done, how do you have friends that you knew at school and you've still got now? Or
yeah, completely. Yeah, I've got a friend who hadn't seen for 19 years, I think. I mean, she lives in the West Indies, so I had to, we had to make it happen. It doesn't just happen, so you have to make a plan, and but it's a way, with the technology these days, you can be just saying a quick WhatsApp, hey, what's happening, and just keep in touch this way. That's brilliant, but you have to plan if you want to see friends, like live in a different country. It takes some effort. I mean, I remember I wanted to do a reunion with the Animas people who are in my cohort.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tried to organize it. It didn't happen. And then they said, oh, it will happen. It will happen one day. And I was like, no, you need people are all different parts of the country. You have to somehow make the effort, take the time out, do some preparation. It doesn't just happen. Life is not just like that. So it's the same as you were saying about work. You wanted this 3 months, you had to ask for it. But if you want to see your friends, you have to do something about it. And as you say, you can't just wait and say, well, maybe they will call me one day.
Yeah. And it's that thing as well, again, of the difference for me about people who sit there waiting for things to happen to them and then suddenly realize life has kind of passed them by, and those that go, oh, hold on a second, I want that, how do I get it, or how do I grow that relationship, or how do I get that job? So I've had a number of people say to me over, and I'm sure you have as well, when you've changed, say, like you were saying, from being a teacher into being a massage therapist, to being a coach, to being, and they're like, well, how have you changed? And I'm like, well, usually what's happened, my pattern of changing careers, not jobs, but careers, has been, oh, that looks really interesting, I'm going to start studying that. And then I start studying it. And then as I'm studying it, I've then started looking for roles within that field. And then so in my interviews that I've gone to, I'm like, here's what I already bring, and I'm studying this because I want to learn more about it, and this is how I'm going to, and very much, again, looking at what are they going to value that I can bring to the table and packaging that up for them. And it's the same with some of my ongoing friendships. It's about valuing them and going, okay, what are you into? Because it's also one of the things is they're not necessarily going to keep up with all the things you're into. Well, they're not. Most people that are not hummingbirds are not going to keep up with all the different changes you have in your life. So I also find with some of my very close friends who are not hummingbirds, it's much easier for me to say, I know you're into, so, I had a very good friend who's moved back to New Zealand now, but when he was living here, one of his things was the stately homes, right? And I love history, so not all of the time, but every now and then I'd say, let's go to a stately home together, right? Because that's something I knew he loved and I was interested enough. Whereas one of his other things was soccer, and I had zero interest in that. And much as I loved him as a friend, I was not going to go and watch soccer with him. Right. But it was about looking at that. What is it that you're interested in that I'm happy to do with you? And with my hummingbird friends, it's often, okay, what cool thing are you up to? Right? Let's go and do something cool that neither of us has ever done before. Yay! So but again, it's about that communication, it's that discussion, it's that knowing what you want for yourself and what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, and then having that conversation.
And I think when you're full on, you will go out of the radar. As you say, you will not being socially active, and friends need to realize that some period of time you're not going to be around doesn't mean you don't care about them. And I will make a conscious effort to organize things to connect, but I know some friends have been complaining, oh, she's so busy, we can't, she's not available. But that's part of the deal. That's how things are. If we're very busy, doesn't mean we don't care for our friends.
One of the concepts I'm playing with is particularly around friendship, but even family to a degree, right, is quality versus quantity. And, I make sure, a bit like you were talking about being present, right? I make sure when I do spend time with my friends, we're doing something fun together and it's quality time together. So I am present with them at that time. And it's about that connection, it's about that interaction, rather than quantity where, a lot of people say, well, my best friend, I see them 3 or 4 times a week. We talk on the phone every day, and I just sit there. When people say that to me, I'm like, the only person I see every day is Gareth, and that's because he lives in this house with me. And I've had conversations with him because both of us travel for work or personally sometimes without each other. And I've seen other people who do that for their careers, and they'll have, hour-long video calls with their partners every night, or, and have text messages 3 or 4 times during the day. And I'm like, Gareth and I exchange a text once during the day when we're not together. If I'm away for a whole month, we'll probably schedule a couple of video calls, but that's it. We don't. And I'm like, are we a bad couple?
Are we normal? Are we normal?
Yeah. These other people do these weird things. But yes, so again, it goes back to that point you made earlier. We're all different, right? And what works for you is what works for you, right?
Yeah, it can be difficult. Like if I look at my mom, for example, so obviously she's in France and she likes phone calls, conversation. I prefer a quick text exchange. So then it's like, okay, do I force myself to ring her? My sister would ring her 3 times a week. I'm like, no, that's not me. I can't. So it's finding the right balance in your needs, the other person's needs, then understanding how you want to communicate. So it needs a lot of discussion around what works for you, what works for me. Let's find a compromise so we're still in touch, even though we might not spend hours on the phone, but and it's okay, we're both okay.
Yeah. And also when I think about quality with my friends and family, it's very much about when I do have conversations with them, because a bit like you, I'm quite happy not to have phone calls or whatever, making it a bit real, kind of. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of small talk anyway, So let's find out what's going on for you and where you're at and where I'm at. And let's talk about that, right? Let's connect because we've got this relationship. Let's talk about who we actually are and be supportive and catch up properly, and because otherwise, to be fair, I get bored. So it's, that to me is the quality of that connection and time, and like you're saying, working out what works for both of you without subsuming yourself in them or ignoring their need, so it's that kind of give and take. We've explored one of the things you said to me the other day, and I thought this is interesting. So again, one of the things I talk to my clients about is what are their underlying patterns. So it's not about what is my one thing, right? It's not about the purpose. It's about saying we have patterns that are what intrigues us, what we keep coming back to, et cetera, et cetera. And I always help them get to the point where it's actually conceptual. So it's not very, very specific. Whereas when I look at, say, passions and interests, those are often very specific. There often be lots of connected bits to them, but there's a specific central kind of passion. And I'm like, okay, so for me, my patterns are people and change. Right. So you were saying the other day that with your focus, although you've got hundreds of ideas, they're all connected. Is there an underlying pattern or patterns?
I don't know. I mean, for me at the moment is what I'm seeing is like collecting information, sharing information. Like so as if I'm on mission. I'm like absorbing all this, but I want to pass it on. It's just about connecting with people and like what we're doing right now. For me, it's important because we're sharing the information. It's like when I found out I was a multi-potentialite, when I spot one, I'm like, oh, hang on, I've got something to tell you. Watch this TED Talk. And and I think that's my pattern. Like, just, I don't know if you call it a pattern, but it's just, at the moment.
What is it? So I'm about to coach you.
For example, when I'm teaching, I absorb as much knowledge about my language, and then I pass it on, and I find ways of passing it on and giving that love, that curiosity. Same with coaching. I'm like understanding, and then you reflect. So it's like, it's like
it's almost like a conduit, isn't it? You're taking something and then
pass it.
Okay, we'll explore this in a separate conversation. I can see the two of us going, ooh, and as are prone to do. So I think we've covered all sorts of fabulous things. Have you got, based on your own experiences in the last few years, have you got any final hints and tips for other people about, weaving their multiple passions into a life that they love?
I think is really about acceptance and not seeing themselves as what's wrong with me, but actually accepting that's how I tick, and just, if people don't get it, they don't get it. But
because that piece around not getting it, right from the beginning, when I first stepped into the Hummingbird piece, which actually for me was the Elizabeth Gilbert video you talked about.
Sorry about that.
You were talking about accepting and not.
I have a lot of clients who are like, I need to choose now. I need to specialize. I have to stop being what I am. This is the answer. It's like, this is the only answer they have. I know there are different answers out there. You have to find what's right for you and only you. And I think people can beat themselves up a lot. And I think that's why I want to explain to the big, to parents, like their kids might have multiple passion, and stop asking them, what do you want to do when you grow up? And or the whole society, or it's like, oh, I've got to pick the right subject. I've got to be. It's okay, I like. when I was young, I picked a degree. I think Yannick said the same. My degree had like 20 different modules.
Yeah.
And marketing, accounting, business, English, all this.
Yeah.
And then, okay, I didn't do anything with it, it seemed. But now it comes very handy because I know about marketing, I know about accountancy, and being self-employed, it's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say to people, just go with the flow, trust the process, as we say in the coaching. Trust, life is about the journey, not the destination. And I see my life as a jigsaw puzzle, and it's all making sense now.
Yeah. And the other way I look at it is that weaving together, all these things are different threads that you're doing, and actually you're weaving this beautiful tapestry, and that tapestry is still, it's evolving as your life evolves. And one of the things I work with my clients exactly around this point, and they're like, well, I have to make a decision for the rest of my life. And I'm like, or not, right? Because that's why you're freaking out. You're freaking out. You're trying to make a decision for the rest of your life. And deep within your self-identity, you know that whatever decision you make now, if you do force yourself to do it for the rest of your life, you will be miserable as hell. And or in a couple of years, you're going to have moved on, you're going to have evolved, there's going to be different places you want to go, different people, different skill sets and knowledge and experience you want to do. So rather than trying to make a decision for the rest of your life, how about making it for the next 2 years or the next 5 years, depending on, how far you can stretch yourself. One of the challenges I give clients one of the things we do is explore what is there forever, right? My forever is 2 years. And so what I do when I'm trying to stretch my planning, it's okay, my forever plus 1 year. So when I look at, say, financial planning or my business strategy, my forever is 2 years. So 2 years plus 1, 3 years. Where do I want to be in 3 years' time? Because for me, that's stretching beyond my comfort zone and at the same time being realistic that, in 3 years' time, I'm going to be beyond my forever. So the likelihood is that whatever is currently turning me on will have evolved or morphed or shifted into something completely different or become a slightly different version or whatever, right? But trying to force me, when people, job interviews, and I can see multi-potentialites, hummingbirds freaking out in job interviews when they ask that wonderful question of where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Nowhere.
So work out an answer if that's a question that gets raised. Ultimately, when it comes to your own life and your own planning and your own, even things like a degree, a lot of degrees now are about 4 years, aren't they? But like you're saying, more and more degrees are now multiple topics within that degree. And you can shape that degree as you go through it. You don't have to, there are degrees that aren't like this, but a lot of them
you can choose your units, your modules, or...
Yeah, exactly. And then the other piece for me is around that piece around there's nothing wrong with us, is there's also, what I found interesting for me is that when I stepped into this and went, oh my goodness, this is who I am, and I've always been like this, and it's totally who I am, and I started looking at the people in my life, I went, oh, so are you, and so are you. Because we often, there's that thing of there's something wrong with me because there's no one else like me. So, well, actually, there are millions of us. Some are still in the closet. They're trying to fit in, right?
Yeah.
Some they don't know. They just don't, they feel that.
Well, I didn't know until I was 50, so.
Yeah, and others absolutely are open to the fact that they do lots of different things and it doesn't worry them that no one else does or that appears that no one else does. But when I took that step back and kind of observed the people around me with that lens on, I mean, actually, there's a lot of us around, and perhaps it's about attracting like. Because I find people fascinating and I find people who do lots of different things fascinating, therefore I have people in my life who do lots of things. I also have lots of people in my life who absolutely are specialists, and I find them fascinating too because they're so different from me. So it's, but
sometimes I wish I was a specialist. It would be much easier.
Yeah, and And I think at various points we've all tried to put ourselves in that space, right? Like I know I have at when I left law, when I left law school, I was absolutely going to do law because that's what I'd studied. And that's not really what happened. Um, I did do it for a couple of years, but then I moved on.
Yeah, it's a sense of, oh, I've invested this time in this, now I need to make the most of it. And I'm like, okay, so bad relationship, you got married, you invested in your marriage, it's really going wrong. You stay in the marriage? No, you don't. You divorce, you do something. So it's the same with your life. If the path you've chosen is not working anymore, change it.
Yeah.
You don't have to be loyal to that path forever, or invested in a law degree, therefore I have to be a lawyer for the rest of my life. No.
Yeah, and I very quickly I looked at, once I got out there into that world, because, universities, it's a whole little microcosm, got out into the world and I went, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to end up doing that, And then I found it highly ironic when I became a management consultant, and a whole lot of the things I thought I didn't want is exactly what I ended up having in my life. And I thoroughly enjoyed, but it was in a different
mindset
way.
Yeah.
And I was in a totally different place. That was 15 years later, So yes.
Yeah, anyway. Just so it like reminds me, like, when I moved to England in the first time, people say, oh, you're going to be here forever. I was like, no way, I'll be back in France. So I went back to France and I was like, no way, I'll be in England forever. Now I'm back in England for, it's going to be 19 years again. And I'm happy this time. The first time I wasn't. So things change and we morph and we have to be flexible. That's why you say, what are you? I'm like, I'm something now. I'll be something else in a few months' time, and it's okay.
Yeah. That whole who are you? So often that's where being able to say I'm a person with multiple passions and what that looks like is much more useful than saying I'm actually entrepreneur is quite useful too, because that could mean anything, right? But yeah, so saying I'm a lawyer or I was once upon a time, right?
The other thing I'd like to say is, like, when you say looking people around you, it's quite interesting that I was really quick to judge people with multi-potential, multi-passion, think, what are they doing? They're not making up their mind. They were doing this, now they're doing that. So even if I am one, I question others. Like my sister, she was a graphic designer, then she was editing films, then she was doing sewing and selling things on the market. Then she was a librarian. Now she's driving the school bus in the morning. What are you doing? So even my own sister, I'm like confused. So I can get that people will be confused about all these things. So that we need to bring awareness to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's growing. So my observation of both the media but also employers is they are looking for people who have that adaptability, have that, and bring a whole lot of perspectives and approaches and stuff, and are very fast and agile at switching from one thing to another, which is something else we're very good at, because that's what they need in business. And my concern is that what's going to happen is, having been very specialist focused, society is going to swing towards everybody has to have this agility and adaptability and love change, and and I'm like, you're going to make all the people who are naturally specialists, or naturally what I call stalwarts, where they have they'll have a variety of things in their lives, but it's a set. They've got a group of things they've always enjoyed and they will always enjoy. They're not happy constantly changing and switching. And whereas that's where we are, if you try and force this group of people into being like this, they're going to be just as miserable as when you try and force us into being just one thing for a long period of time. It's that, like you're saying, it's about being who you are, playing to your strengths. And for me, it's also about allowing others to also be who they are, and again, I think when we step into this and own it for ourselves and become more accepting of it, and tie into our curiosity about others and our openness about how others are, we are slightly ahead of the game because we're curious, right? Well, why do you choose to do that? I'm just curious about what you're doing. What makes you tick? How come you're different from that person? But yeah, it's about
not judging. Judging.
It's not judging yourself, and it's not judging other people. And accepting who you are, and for me, it's not just about accepting; it's about celebrating who you are, right? And Yannick and I talked about, because he obviously does a lot of this positive psychology and strength stuff. So he was talking about that, and I was like, well, actually, I'm very much about that too. I mean, celebrate who you are, accept who you are, celebrate that, and play to your strengths. So,
and if you can't see your strengths, ask other people, what do you see in me? And then that could be quite useful as well.
Yeah, and often we fall into the trap, I think, of not recognizing our strengths because they come naturally to us. So we haven't had to work for them. So we don't recognize them as strengths. But like you're saying, other people see them as strengths because what you do naturally without much thought, they really struggle with.
Exactly. That's when I quit my job, age 50. For me, was not a big deal. I was like, I quit my job. I said, people said, well, I've got a mortgage, I've got kids. I said, yeah, I've got a mortgage, I've got kids. But for me, it was so natural. I didn't have this fear. So there was no, hey, well done, you did it. So well, there's no point of saying, well done, I did it. I didn't have any fear. It's like somebody who's good at math. They think, well, I'm just good at math. So there's no celebration because it's just what it is. But actually, well, you do things that other people are not capable of doing. So good on you. But it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to recognize that.
Yeah, and that's where, like you're saying, having someone else or others, not just one, but a couple of other people that you trust and possibly who interact with you in different spheres of your life. Because then if you're in totally different spheres of your life and they're all telling you that something is your strength, then it really truly is a strength that shows up wherever.
Yeah, it must be true. It must be true. Yeah.
Whereas sometimes a strength someone mentions to you, it's because you're in a particular context, and potentially it is a strength, but it's a contextual strength rather than it's about exploring that for yourself. So anyway, Carole, this has been awesome.